I've lived in a lot of places, but the worst one wasn't some abandoned farmhouse or a cabin in the woods. It was an apartment building with thin walls. It started when I moved into a small complex on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Beige halls, old carpet that smelled like dust and wet shoes, and a lobby that always felt a little too quiet, like the building was holding its breath. I was 24, fresh out of a breakup, trying to reset my life. The rent was cheap, the commute was short, and the property manager, a tired-looking woman named Denise, seemed nice enough. As she handed me the keys, she pointed down the hallway. "Unit 2B is empty," she said quickly. "So it should be peaceful for you." She said it like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't think much of it. Empty neighbor? Perfect. No music, no loud arguments, no late-night TV. I moved in on a Friday. By Sunday night, I already hated the building. Not because it was loud. Because it was too quiet. The kind of quiet where you notice your own breathing. Where your footsteps feel rude. Where, at night, the silence presses against your ears until you swear you're hearing things that aren't there. The first weird thing happened around midnight. I was lying in bed scrolling my phone, half asleep, when I heard a soft sound through the wall to my left. Unit 2B's wall. It sounded like fingers tapping. Not a knock. Not a fist. Just tap tap, tap, tap tap tap. Like someone testing the wall, or counting something, or trying to get my attention. I froze and listened. It stopped. Then, a few seconds later, it started again. Slow at first. Then quicker. Then it stopped again. I told myself it was pipes. Buildings make noises. Old places creak and pop. But pipes don't tap like fingers. And pipes don't pause like they're listening back. The next morning, I asked Denise while she was checking the mailboxes. "Hey, is 2B really empty?" I asked. Denise didn't look up. She slid letters into slots like she'd done it 1,000 times. "Yes," she said. I waited. She sighed like she knew what I was thinking. "Why?" "I thought I heard something last night," I said. "Like tapping." From the wall. Denise's hand paused for half a second. Then she continued sorting mail. "These buildings shift," she said. "Especially at night." Her voice was calm, but her shoulders were tense, like she wanted the conversation over. I nodded and walked away, but it stuck with me. That night, I left the lamp on in the living room. I didn't know why. I just did. Like a small light could keep something away. I got into bed at around 11:30. Midnight came. And the tapping started again. This time it wasn't random. It was a pattern. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath. Then I heard something else. A faint scrape, like something being dragged along the wall. Then, a whisper. It wasn't clear. It sounded like a voice pressed right up against the drywall. Soft. Hissing. Like someone speaking through their teeth. I sat up, my heart thumping so hard it felt like it might shake the bed. I leaned closer to the wall. The whispering stopped. Then, very gently, I heard 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Not tapping this time. Actual knocks. I didn't respond. I couldn't. A few seconds passed. Then I heard it again, soft, breathy whispering. Like someone murmuring a secret. I slid out of bed and walked into the living room, keeping my eyes on the wall like something might push through it. I pressed my ear to it. The whispering stopped immediately, like whoever was doing it knew exactly what I was doing. I backed away. And as I stood there in the dim light, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The wall wasn't just making noise. It felt warmer. Like someone had been standing against it. Like skin against drywall. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of. I walked down the hall to Unit 2B. The door was plain brown like all the others. No decoration. No welcome mat. I looked at the doorknob. There were scratch marks around it, like someone had tried to force it at some point. I leaned in and listened. Silence. I wanted to tell myself Denise was right. That it was empty. That it was all in my head. But then I smelled something. Not strong, not obvious. Just a faint scent coming from under the door. Like old pennies and damp laundry. Like a basement. I stepped back and almost laughed at myself. "You're freaking out over nothing," I muttered. Then, behind me, a voice said, "Can I help you?" I spun around so fast my neck hurt. A man was standing a few feet down the hall. He was tall and thin, maybe mid-30s, with a sharp jaw and eyes that looked slightly too large for his face. He wore a gray hoodie even though it was warm in the building. I swallowed. Sorry. I'm new. I thought this unit was empty." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It is," he said. I stared at him. "Then, you're not." "I'm in 2C," he said quickly, pointing to a door farther down. "I saw you on the camera." My stomach tightened. "There's a camera?" I asked. He nodded like it was normal. "In my peephole. Just a little one. For security." He said it so casually, like everyone had peephole cameras. Like it was a reasonable thing to have in a quiet apartment building. I forced a laugh. "Oh. Right. Yeah. Makes sense." He stepped closer. "Don't worry about 2B," he said softly. "It's not your business." His voice was calm, but the words felt like a warning. I nodded, my throat dry, and walked back to my unit. That night, I locked my door, chained it, and put a chair under the knob like I was a kid again. The tapping started. But this time it wasn't from the wall. It was from my front door. Soft. Slow. Careful. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up in bed, my blood turning cold. Then, a whisper, right outside the door. "Open." It sounded like a man trying to speak quietly, but not quiet enough. I didn't move. "Open," the voice said again, a little more impatient. I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and dialed my friend Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. "Dude?" he said, half asleep. "Someone's at my door," I whispered. "In the hallway. They're telling me to open." There was a pause. "Call the cops," Marcus said, suddenly awake. "I don't want to make it worse," I whispered, like the person outside could hear me through the door. Then the tapping stopped, and the hallway went silent. I waited a full minute, heart pounding, before I crept out of bed and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But right as I was about to back away, something moved. Not in front of the door. Above it. A face slowly lowered into view from the top of my peephole. Like someone had been standing on something and leaned down. It was the man from the hall. The one who said he lived in 2C. His eyes were wide and unblinking. His mouth was slightly open, like he was breathing through it. We stared at each other through that tiny lens. Then, very slowly, he smiled. And he raised one finger to his lips. "Ship," he mouthed. I stumbled back, almost falling, and slammed my hand over my mouth to stop myself from making a sound. I heard footsteps in the hall. Soft, careful steps moving away. Then silence again. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat on the couch with the lamp on, holding a kitchen knife like it could protect me. In the morning, I went straight to Denise. "I want to move," I said. Denise looked tired, like she'd heard those words before. "Did he bother you?" she asked quietly. My stomach turned. "He?" I repeated. She hesitated, then glanced toward the hallway like she was afraid of being overheard. "The guy in 2C, she said. I stared at her. "He told me he saw me on his camera." Denise's face hardened. "There's no tenant in 2C, she said. I felt my skin go cold. "What?" I asked. Denise shook her head. 2C has been vacant for months. My voice came out thin. "But I talked to him. Last night he was at my door." Denise's mouth tightened. She looked genuinely scared for the first time. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice. "Do not open your door at night. Do you understand me?" I nodded, barely able to breathe. Denise swallowed. "We've had issues. We changed the locks. We sealed 2B. We thought." "Sealed?" I repeated. Denise stared at me like she'd already said too much. "I can't talk about it here," she whispered. "Just don't open the door." I left the office shaking. That night, I stayed at Marcus's place. I didn't go back until morning, and when I did, it was with Marcus and his brother. We walked into my apartment, and something immediately felt wrong. The air smelled stale, like the windows had been shut for too long. Marcus frowned. "You sure you locked up?" "I did," I said. We checked the door chain. It was still latched. Chair still under the knob. But my bedroom door was slightly open. I always keep it closed. Marcus stepped forward. "Hey," he said. "Maybe you forgot." I shook my head. "No." We pushed it open. My bed had been made. Not like I make it. Not messy, not rushed. Perfectly smooth, like a hotel bed. And on my pillow was something small and dark. A strand of hair. Long black hair. I don't have long hair. Marcus picked it up with 2 fingers. "That's weird," he said. Then we saw the wall. On the wall separating my unit and 2B, faint lines had been scratched into the paint. Like someone had carved into it with a key or a nail. At first, it looked random. But when I leaned closer, my stomach turned. It was writing. A message, repeated over and over in shaky letters. "Open. Open. Open." Marcus cursed under his breath. "We're calling the cops." When the police came, they were polite but skeptical. They checked my locks, my windows, the hallway. Nothing. I tried to tell them about 2C. One of the officers frowned and spoke to Denise in the office. They came back looking grim. "There's no tenant in 2C, the officer said. "It's vacant." "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "But someone's there." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. Then he asked Denise something quietly. Denise nodded. The officer turned back to me. "We can't break into other units without cause," he said. "But we can check 2B's door." I swallowed. Please! We walked down the hall. Denise unlocked 2B with a key that looked newer than the others. But before she could open it, she paused, her hand shaking slightly. The officer pushed the door open, and the smell hit us. Not rotten food. Not garbage. Something worse. Something like damp earth and old blood. The unit was dark, empty, and stripped. No furniture, no lights. Just bare floor and walls. But the walls were covered. Not with paint. With scratch marks. Hundreds of them. Like tally marks or claw marks. And in the center of the far wall, carved deep into the drywall, were words. I can hear you breathing. My knees went weak. Marcus grabbed my arm. We're leaving, he said. But the officer stepped inside and swept his flashlight around. The beam landed on something in the corner. A small pile of items. Clothes. Some shoes. A couple of wallets. One of the wallets was open, an ID visible inside. The officer leaned in, read it, then stiffened. He looked at Denise. This person was reported missing. Denise covered her mouth, eyes wide. Then the officer's flashlight moved again. And I saw something else. A vent cover on the wall was missing. The opening behind it was dark. The officer shined the light into the vent. For a second, nothing. Then movement. Something shifted deep inside. Like someone pulling back into the darkness. The officer jerked back, drawing his gun. Police! He shouted. Come out! Silence. Then a soft sound echoed from inside the vent. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingers on metal. The officer backed out, calling for backup. I didn't wait. I ran. I moved out that day. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about my deposit. For weeks after, I slept with lights on. I jumped at every small sound. And even now, years later, sometimes late at night, I'll be lying in bed in a totally different home, and I'll hear it. A soft tapping sound. Not in the wall, but in the back of my mind. Like something is still listening. Like something is still waiting for me to open the door. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happened. It was one of those places where everyone had a lawn, everyone waved, and the biggest drama was someone parking too close to a mailbox. So when my mom bought a small house there after my parents divorced, we were relieved. It felt safe. Until the people next door moved in. They arrived in late October, right when the air starts to smell like dead leaves and chimney smoke. A moving truck pulled up and they unloaded slowly, quietly, like they didn't want anyone watching. But of course, everyone watched. Their house was the same as ours, 2 floors, white siding, a backyard fenced off by tall wood panels. The family was just 3 people, a man, a woman, and a teenage boy. They didn't smile much. They didn't talk much. And they never came outside unless they had to. The first time I noticed something was wrong was the week after they moved in. I was 15 and bored. I'd been tossing a football to myself in the backyard. It bounced weird and rolled all the way to the fence line, right near the corner where our fence met theirs. When I went to grab it, I noticed something strange. A small hole had been cut into the fence. Not a crack. Not a broken board. A clean, round hole, about the size of a silver dollar. It looked like someone drilled it. I leaned in, curious, and tried to see through. But on the other side, there was another board, like they'd put something against it. All I could see was darkness. I stepped back, feeling suddenly uncomfortable, like I'd walked in on something private. That night at dinner, I mentioned it to my mom. "Mom, the neighbors drilled a hole in the fence." She didn't look up from her plate. "Probably for a cable line," she said. "It's at eye level," I said. "Like for looking." That made her pause. She sighed, tired. "Don't mess with it," she said. "We don't want problems." I dropped it. For a while, nothing else happened. Then our dog started acting weird. We had a mutt named Jasper, usually friendly and dumb in the best way. He loved everyone. But after the neighbors moved in, Jasper refused to go near the fence line. If you tried to lead him toward it, he'd plant his paws and whine, ears flat, tail tucked. Sometimes he'd stand on the porch, staring at that corner like he was watching something move. And at night, he'd growl. Not barking. Just a low, steady growl, aimed at the fence. One night I woke up to Jasper making a sound I'd never heard before. A yelp. Not a playful yelp. A hurt yelp. I ran to the window and looked out into the backyard. The porch light lit up part of the yard, but the fence line was shadowy. And there, near the corner, was Jasper. He was backed away from the fence, stiff, hackles raised. And something moved behind the fence. I couldn't see what. Just a shadow shifting along the other side, like someone walking slowly. Jasper barked once, sharp, warning. Then the shadow stopped. And a voice, low and calm, came through the fence. "Quiet." Jasper immediately fell silent. I froze. My skin prickled all over. The voice wasn't my mom's. It wasn't a teenager's. It was the neighbor man's voice. I'd only heard him speak once, when he'd signed for a package on their porch. He'd said, "Thanks." Same voice now, but colder. "Quiet," he repeated. And Jasper, trembling, backed away and ran to the door, scratching to be let in. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, Jasper wouldn't eat. When my mom went to check on him, she noticed a small spot of blood on his paw. We looked at it and found a tiny cut, like something sharp had nicked him. "Probably stepped on a nail," my mom said. But I knew where he'd been. Near the fence. Over the next week, I started noticing more things. At night, sometimes I'd hear a faint scraping sound from outside. Like metal on wood. Like someone dragging something along the fence. And sometimes, when I stood at my bedroom window and looked toward their house, I'd see a dim light moving in their backyard. Not a flashlight beam. Something smaller. Like a candle. Moving low to the ground, slow and steady. Then one night, I heard whispering. It wasn't inside my room. It was outside. Coming from the backyard. I pulled my curtain back just a little and looked down. The neighbor's backyard was darker than ours, but I could still see shapes. And near the fence corner, I saw the teenage boy. He was standing still, facing our fence. At first I thought he was just staring at it, maybe being creepy. Then I realized he wasn't alone. Behind him, in the shadows, I could just barely make out the outlines of the man and woman. They were close to him, almost like they were surrounding him. And they were speaking quietly. I couldn't hear the words. Just murmurs. The boy stood rigid, like he didn't want to be there. Then the man stepped closer to the fence, right where that drilled hole was. He leaned in and pressed his face toward it. Like he was looking through. Right into our yard. Right into our house. I ducked back, heart pounding. And then I heard something that made my stomach flip. A soft tapping sound. Not on my window. On the fence. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingers against wood. Then the whispering stopped. A few seconds later, I heard the man's voice, low and satisfied. There you are. I didn't look out again. The next day, I told my mom everything. The hole. The voice. The boy. The tapping. She listened, but I could see disbelief on her face, mixed with worry. I'll talk to them, she said like she didn't want to. That afternoon, my mom walked next door. I watched from our porch. The neighbor woman opened the door, smiling politely, like she'd been practicing it. My mom talked for a minute, gesturing toward the fence. The woman's smile never changed. Then the man appeared behind her, and everything shifted. Even from a distance, I could see how his presence made the air feel heavier. He said something to my mom. My mom's face tightened. She nodded, forced a smile, and walked back quickly. What did they say? I asked. My mom didn't answer right away. She went inside, closed the door, and locked it. Then she finally said, They said the hole isn't theirs. I stared at her. Then whose is it? She swallowed. They told me to stop accusing them. And they said, if we keep looking into their yard, they'll call the police. That makes no sense, I said. We're the ones being watched. My mom's hands were shaking slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. Just stay away from the fence, she said. But staying away didn't stop it. 2 nights later, Jasper disappeared. We let him out like usual around 9 p.m. He wandered into the yard, sniffed around, and then, nothing. A few minutes passed. I called his name. No response. My mom came out annoyed. He's probably chasing a squirrel. We searched the yard with flashlights. No Jasper. We checked the gate. It was closed. We checked the fence. No broken boards. No holes big enough for him to slip through. But when I got to the corner, I saw something. The round hole in the fence was bigger. Not by much. But enough. Like someone had carved it wider. And around it, the wood looked scraped, fresh marks, pale against dark old wood. My mom saw it too. Her face went pale. We called Jasper's name again and again. Then we heard it. A faint whine. Not from our yard. From theirs. It was coming from the other side of the fence. Right near the hole. I crouched down, heart racing. Jasper? I whispered. The whine came again, weak and scared. My mom grabbed my shoulder. Don't, she said firmly. But I was already leaning in. I looked through the hole. And what I saw made me jerk back so fast I hit my head on the fence. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. It was dark on the other side, but the moon gave just enough light. Jasper was there. But he wasn't standing. He was lying on his side, pressed close to the fence, like he tried to crawl toward us. His legs were wrong. Tied. Thin rope wrapped around them. And behind him, just a few feet away, stood the neighbor boy. He was holding something in his hand. A leash. Jasper's leash. But Jasper wasn't moving toward him. He was trembling, eyes wide, staring at the boy like he didn't recognize him. And the boy was crying. Silent tears running down his face. His mouth moved, like he was whispering something. I pressed my ear to the hole and listened. He was saying, over and over, barely audible. "I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry!" Then the shadow of the neighbor man moved into view behind him. The boy flinched. The man's hand came down on the boy's shoulder, hard. He leaned toward the fence hole. Toward me. Like he knew I was there. I backed away, stumbling. My mom grabbed me and pulled me toward the house. We called the police. We told them our dog was in the neighbor's yard and we thought he'd been taken. When the police arrived, the neighbors answered the door calmly. We stood on our porch watching. The officer spoke to them. The man nodded, looked annoyed, then stepped aside like he was letting them in. They went into the house. A minute passed. Then 2 minutes. Then 5. Finally, one officer came back out. He walked over to us. His expression was neutral, tired. "They don't have your dog," he said. My mom's voice shook. "But we heard him. We saw him." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, there's no dog back there." My skin went cold. "That's not possible," I said. I looked through the hole. He was right there. The officer's eyes flicked to the fence corner. Then he looked back at me. "There's no hole," he said. I stared at him like he was insane. "What?" I whispered. He walked with us into the backyard. We went straight to the corner. And when I saw the fence, my stomach dropped. The hole was gone. Not patched. Not covered. Gone. A brand new board had been nailed over that entire section, clean and fresh, like it had always been there. I stepped closer, touching it. The wood was raw and pale. New nails still shiny. My mom's mouth was open, but no words came out. The officer looked at us like we were making it up. "Maybe you're mistaken," he said. I wasn't mistaken. I felt dizzy. Like reality had shifted. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Jasper. About the boy crying. About the man leaning toward the hole like he knew I was watching. A week later, we found Jasper's collar. Not in our yard. In our mailbox. No note. Just the collar, muddy and stiff. And on the inside of it, where Jasper's name tag was attached, someone had carved something small into the plastic. 3 words. "Mind your line." We moved 2 months later. My mom told people it was because she got a better job. But I knew the truth. We were running. And sometimes, when I drive through old neighborhoods with tall fences, I still think about that corner. That drilled hole. And the boy whispering, "I'm sorry." Because I don't think Jasper was the first thing that went missing over that fence line. And I don't think he was the last. When my wife and I finally bought our first home, we were proud of it in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy. But it was ours. A small 2-bedroom house in a neighborhood where kids rode bikes and people left their Halloween decorations up too long. It felt normal. And normal was all we wanted. Our neighbors were polite at first. Mostly older couples, quiet people who nodded when you waved. Then there was the house directly next to ours. The day we moved in, the neighbor came outside and watched us unload. He was probably late 40s, thick build, clean-shaven, wearing a tucked-in polo shirt like he was going to a meeting. He stood in his driveway with his arms crossed, staring. Not angry. Just studying us. I waved. He didn't wave back. My wife, Nina, whispered, "Friendly." I laughed, but it felt forced. An hour later, someone knocked on our front door. Nina opened it. And there he was, our neighbor, holding a covered plate. He smiled, but it was tight and controlled. "Welcome," he said. "Thought you might be hungry." Nina thanked him, warm and polite. "That's so nice of you." He leaned slightly, peering past her into our living room like he was checking the layout. "I'm Carl," he said. "I'm Nina, and this is—" "Yeah," Carl said, cutting her off, looking at me. "I know." My stomach tightened. "You know?" He smiled again. "I read the sale listing. Congrats." He said it like a compliment, but it didn't feel like one. He handed over the plate. Nina thanked him again and closed the door. We set the plate on the counter. It was brownies. They looked homemade. A little uneven, slightly overcooked edges. Nina reached for one. I stopped her. "Maybe don't," I said. She blinked. "Why?" "He's just being nice." "I don't know," I said. "Just maybe wait." She rolled her eyes but agreed. That night, we tossed the brownies. The next day, Carl was outside again, cleaning his driveway with a hose like he had nothing better to do. He watched Nina leave for work. Then he watched me pull out of the driveway. And when I glanced in the rearview mirror, he was still watching. At first, I tried to ignore him. Some people are just weird. Some people don't know how to act. Then the little things started. Our trash bin would be moved. Not tipped over. Just shifted. Like someone had rolled it a few feet and lined it up differently. Our porch light would be off when I knew I left it on. Our gate to the backyard would be unlatched. Nina said I was being paranoid. "Maybe the wind," she said. But there were no storms. No heavy gusts. And the latch was stiff. Then came the first real incident. It was a Tuesday night. Nina was working late. I was alone in the house, watching TV. Around 10 p.m., I heard a knock. I muted the TV. Another knock. Not hard. Soft, polite. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Carl stood there holding something. A small bag. I didn't open it. I spoke through the door. "Hey, Carl. Everything okay?" Carl smiled up at the peephole like he knew exactly where I was. "Just returning something," he said. "Returning?" I asked. He held up the bag. "Your wife dropped this when she got out of her car." My stomach turned. Nina had been gone since morning. How would he have something she dropped, now? I didn't open the door. "Just leave it on the porch," I said. Carl's smile faded slightly. "It's important," he said. I stared at him through the peephole, trying to decide what to do. He stepped closer to the door. "Open it," he said softer now. I felt a chill. "No," I said. For a moment, he stood completely still. Then he set the bag down slowly and said, "All right." He walked away. When he was gone, I waited a full minute before opening the door and grabbing the bag. Inside was a scarf. Nina's scarf. The one she wore last winter. But she hadn't worn it in months. I brought it inside and stared at it like it was a dead animal. When Nina got home, I asked her about it. She looked confused. "That scarf? I haven't seen it in forever." "You didn't drop it today?" I asked. "No," she said, frowning. "It's been in the closet." "Why?" I told her what happened. Her face went pale. "Maybe he found it somewhere," she said weakly. Where? I asked. In our closet? We both went quiet. After that, Nina started taking me seriously. We installed the door camera. We kept the curtains closed. We stopped going outside at the same time. But Carl didn't stop. If anything, he got worse. He started leaving gifts. A potted plant on the porch. A box of tea. A handwritten note that said, "Welcome home." Then another note, a week later. "Welcome back." We hadn't gone anywhere. Then came the night Nina woke me up shaking. "There's someone in the backyard," she whispered. I sat up, heart pounding. We listened. There was a faint sound, like footsteps on grass. Slow, deliberate. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, zooming in on the backyard through the window. The porch light lit up part of the yard. And there, near the back fence, was a figure. A man. Standing still. Facing the house. I zoomed in and my stomach dropped. Carl. He was standing in our backyard. Inside our fence. Just staring at our kitchen window like he knew we were watching. Nina covered her mouth to keep from screaming. I called out through the glass. "Carl! What the hell are you doing?" Carl didn't flinch. He raised his hand slowly and waved. Then he pointed down at the ground. I looked where he pointed. And I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A line. A thin white line like chalk. Drawn across our lawn. Not just any line. A line that started at our fence gate and ran straight to our back door. Like a path. Like someone marking a route. I yanked the back door lock, but Nina grabbed my arm. "Don't open it," she whispered urgently. I froze. Right then, Carl turned and walked calmly toward the side gate. He reached up, unlatched it from the inside, and stepped out into his own yard. Like he'd been there the whole time. Like it was normal. I called the police. They arrived, asked questions, looked around. Carl denied everything, calm and offended. "I was in my house all night," he said. The police looked at us like we were overreacting. "We didn't see any signs of forced entry," one officer said. "Could have been an animal, could have been." "There's a chalk line," I said, pointing. They looked. But the line was gone. Like it had never existed. I felt dizzy. The officer shrugged. "No evidence," he said. After they left, I checked the door camera footage. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the timeline. 10:12 p.m., motion detected in backyard. I hit play. The screen showed the yard. Empty. Then, suddenly, Carl appeared at the edge of the frame. Not walking in. Not coming through the gate. Just appearing. Like the video skipped a second and he was there. I rewound. Played again. Same thing. A missing moment. Then Carl, standing and staring at the house. Nina watched over my shoulder, her face strained of color. "That's not right," she whispered. Then we watched him point down at the ground. And in the video, the chalk line was visible. Clear as day. But when I paused it and looked outside, there was nothing. It was like the camera was seeing something we couldn't. That night, Nina and I slept in the living room with all the lights on. Around 3 a.m., our doorbell rang. Not a knock. The doorbell. We both sat up, frozen. The camera app popped up on my phone. Motion at the front door. I opened the live view. Carl stood there in the dark, smiling up at the camera. He held something in his hands. A small box. He pressed it against the door and gently set it down. Then he leaned close to the camera lens and whispered something. The camera didn't pick up audio, but I could read his lips. He said, "You forgot something." Then he walked away. We waited until morning. I opened the door and picked up the box. Inside was a key. Our house key. The one Nina kept on her keyring. I ran inside, heart hammering. Nina grabbed her keys and checked. Her house key was missing. We searched everywhere. Gone. And yet, here it was. In Carl's box. That's when Nina started crying quietly, like her body finally accepted what her mind didn't want to. "He's been inside," she whispered. "He's been inside our house." I wanted to deny it. But deep down, I already knew. That day, we changed the locks. We added extra cameras. We put alarms on the windows. And for a few days, nothing happened. No gifts. No notes. Carl didn't come outside. It almost felt like we'd won. Then, on the 5th night, the power went out. Not the whole neighborhood. Just our house. Everything went dark. The fridge stopped humming. The AC died. We grabbed flashlights and checked the breaker panel. The main switch had been flipped off. From the outside, my throat went dry. I heard Nina whisper, "We're not alone." Then we heard it. A soft tapping sound. From the wall. Not pipes. Not settling. Tapping. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the side of the house. The wall we shared with Carl's garage. Tap, tap, tap. Nina clutched my arm. "Please," she whispered. "Please tell me that's not." The tapping stopped. And then, from the darkness, we heard a voice. Low, calm, right up against the wall like the person was pressing their face to it. "Welcome home," Carl whispered. We ran. We didn't grab clothes. We didn't grab anything but our phones and wallets. We drove to a hotel and stayed there for a week. When we came back with my brother and a locksmith, we found something waiting on our bed. A welcome mat. Brand new. Clean. Placed perfectly at the foot of the bed like a gift. It said, "Homeowner." But under that, in smaller letters, someone had added a line with a marker. For now. We sold the house a few months later, taking a loss just to get away. The day we moved out, Carl stood in his driveway watching, arms crossed, that same tight smile on his face. Nina avoided looking at him. I couldn't. As we drove away, I glanced back one last time. Carl raised his hand and waved. And then he pointed toward the "for sale" sign we'd left behind. Like he was approving the decision. Like he'd been waiting for it. We never found out how he got Nina's key. We never found out how he got into our yard without leaving evidence. And the creepiest part? A year later, out of curiosity, I checked public records online and saw the house had been sold again. The new owners didn't last long either. Because the listing popped up again just 6 months after that. And in one of the photos, staged neatly on the bed, was that same welcome mat. Homeowner. Still there. Like it belonged. Like it was never meant to leave. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories. If you want to share your story with us, send us at belladarktales@gmail.com.